Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. The gallery at Cal IT2 is very pleased to present Silent Zone, curated by Karla, Villegas, and featuring the work of Antonio Vega, Macotela, Laura Balboa, and Laboratorio 060. The subtitle of the exhibition brings together the ethical and the aesthetic, two vital dimensions of experience whose mutual implications are often overlooked. It foregrounds the fact that the aesthetic is bound up in the behavioral. It's bound up in activity, in situated embodied practices, in questions about how to live. It involves questions of conduct. And that, by the way, is Santiago, who also joined us today.
Maybe I should do the announcement or like a...
Sure,
yeah,
yes.
No, it's just, I'm sorry, I just want to make a little warning that I have my baby here. He's just 3 months old and I'm very attached to him. So I would ask a little bit of your patience. If he starts crying, I'm going to attend him and trying of not being very, I don't know, not to cause a big confusion here in the stage. So thank you in advance.
Okay, yes. All right, good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just to quickly contextualize, and we want to move on because we don't have a lot of time today. But in this bringing together that I want to talk about of the ethical and the aesthetic, technology, of course, plays a very large role. And the exhibition points out that in the global era, the distribution of technology and knowledge is not uniform. Technology enables, but it also excludes. It enables, also constrains. It redistributes resources and capacities, but it also grounds them in specific populations, specific configurations of human life. The exercise of power on social bodies is amplified and maintained through institutional, physical, and administrative mechanisms and knowledge structures. Yet, as Antonio Vega Macotela's work demonstrates, there's a pliability within the regulation. Other configurations of human life, other sites of agency become possible within these mechanisms of control. And within the most innocuous surfaces, the most standardized codes and images lurk complicated physical realities, as witnessed in Laura's Balboa's revealing of the material conditions behind the use of the .tv domain, not the least of which involves a specific population and a specific country in danger of disappearing due to ecological decay and global warming. Inclusion-exclusion is a problematic opposition, much like the online, offline, local, global. In a networked world, everything is bound up in everything else. Laboratorio 060 seeks out forms of existence within the borderlands, revealing new frontiers of experience. They and the artists of Silent Zone altogether aim to account for that which technology excludes, regions, populations, practices, in terms of a constitutive inside. And the question is, how to negotiate difference, how to develop new ethical networks of cooperation, new concepts of agency and event. So we're very pleased to have our panelists today, and we're going to move along fairly quickly so we can have a short audience discussion with everyone at the end. And so by way of introduction, I don't want to go into everyone's biography, but I would like to point out that our panelists today are very accomplished artists and curator, all pretty much based in Mexico City, and we're very pleased to be able to host them here tonight. So we'll begin with Karla Villegas. the curator of the exhibition. Yes, yes, I'm sorry.
Hi, good evening and welcome. And my name is Karla Villegas, curator of the exhibition Silent Zone, Ethical Intrusion in Aesthetic Behavior. The paper leaf that you are now holding is my curatorial statement that I'm about to read in Spanish because it is easier for me to express myself in my language. But first, I would like to deeply thank Cal-IT2 for welcoming the project, to Trish and Ricardo Dominguez, and everyone involved in making it possible, especially Hector, Sam, and Mike, also the Mexican institution that took part in my project, Secutin, and the Humex Foundation. And finally, although I will read the statement in my Spanish, the topics and important issues are literally translated so. Again, thank you very much for being here and enjoy the exhibition, please. Me gustaría comenzar con una cita que extraigo de Bruce Sterling. We don't live in a technocratic information society. We live in a highly advanced capitalist society. People talk about the power and glory of specialized knowledge and technical expertise. Knowledge is power, but if so, why aren't knowledgeable people in power? This is the question. La actual configuración del mundo en un sistema globalizado, donde las distintas economías y regiones culturales entran en contacto por medio de la integración mundial de redes, no solo económicas, sino sobre todo políticas, apunta a la consolidación de un movimiento de rebasamiento de los territorios nacionales a favor de una estructuración de lo político, donde la relación entre estados nacionales se define desde la lógica de una geografía del poder. Ante la postulación de un mundo categorizado de tal manera en el que las diferencias declinan a favor de la celebración de una identidad posibilitada por las redes informacionales, se torna necesario exponer críticamente la lógica que supone esta concepción actual. Son tiempos de posmodernidad, donde el imperio, definición acuñada por Michael Hart y Anthony Negri, no posee un lugar concreto. No hay centro ni periferia, ni sur o norte, pues ambos son ya espacios globalizados. Los principales protagonistas del capitalismo posmoderno no son más los estados nacionales, sino las corporaciones multinacionales que ya poseen un territorio específico. Nos encontramos así con la transición de una sociedad disciplinaria a una sociedad de control, en la transformación de la concepción clásica del capitalismo y del sistema mundial dominado por la perspectiva de la territorialidad a la de una concepción del mundo como ámbito desterritorializado, globalizado. El actual sistema ya no es nacional, sino capitalista, y se caracteriza por ser un capitalismo posfordista e industrial ceñido a la producción de objetos. No ceñido ya a la producción de objetos, sino centrado en la producción de símbolos y lenguajes abstractos. Este es un trabajo de carácter inmaterial que exige una producción no limitada a un territorio y que rompe aparentemente con las fronteras de la fábrica como lugar de operación. El conocimiento se convierte así en el principal impulso de knowledge-based economy, reemplazando tendencialmente la fuerza de trabajo físico y maquínico por el trabajo inmaterial. La tecnología en gran medida ha posibilitado y contribuido a esta articulación del nuevo orden, exacerbando el llamado capitalismo intelectual, que tras de sí tiene todo un aparato que custodia los servicios, la propiedad intelectual y artística. Esto, desde luego, conforma una serie de cuestiones muy importantes desde los que apuntan hacia una reflexión sobre la pertinencia ética, que significa poder observar y poder entrar en contacto con el otro a partir no de mi articulación, no a partir de una abstracción que además de alguna manera se exacerba dentro del común en el capitalismo posfordista o cognitivo. Me parece que una de las cosas más importantes para recuperar aquí es justo cómo esto establece dos tendencias importantes. Cuando se olvida, cuando ya no hay se ciñe a la producción de objetos y se traspasa esta valoración al trabajo inmaterial, es decir, al conocimiento, a la producción y distribución del conocimiento. Esto, a la base de ello, también está otra tendencia importante, que precisamente de la que se sostiene, que es la producción de objetos, y que normalmente es un trabajo devaluado, infravalorado y fundamentalmente es femenino, es decir, son todas las maquilas que están alrededor de las zonas periféricas. En este sentido, y evidentemente como tengo poco tiempo, no puedo leer todo el statement que ustedes tienen ahora en sus manos, porque bueno, tengo 10 minutos, pero me parece importante señalar que justo a partir de esta recuperación que se hace y esta reflexión que se hace a partir de el contexto del que estoy hablando y del que ustedes van a poder leer en el statement, me parece importante situar aquí la pertinencia de encontrar propuestas curatoriales y propuestas artísticas que de alguna manera den luz, arrojen luz o pongan de relieve cuáles son las necesidades que ahora, que pongan de relieve la necesidad de plantear con el arte puntos que puedan de alguna forma que puedan hablar y dejar que las zonas de silencio dejen de serlos. Es decir, esta exposición se concentra en 3 zonas fundamentales. La zona de la frontera, cuyo trabajo lo podemos observar con las prácticas artísticas que hacen tanto Lourdes Morales como Javier Toscano, y que a este proyecto le antecede el proyecto que ellos mostraron en la frontera de Belice y México. Y la idea justo de invitarlos a esta exposición era hacer una investigación sobre la frontera de México-Tijuana, en los términos que ellos estipulaban. Por otra parte, la siguiente zona de silencio es la de José Antonio Vega Macotela, que justo es muy interesante porque dentro del proyecto Time Divisa se escoge el intercambio número 62, que para mí era muy importante mostrar dentro de la galería. Es un proyecto que ustedes pueden tocar y es una abstracción, es decir, en contraposición de todos los devices que existen ahora como el iPad, el iTouch. De repente se pierde este proceso de subjetividad cuando tocas, entonces, y en realidad no te traslada, solamente te presenta datos. Con esta pieza, al tocarla, se vuelve no interactiva, pero de alguna manera es importante dentro de esta suerte de telepresencia, una noción a la que se recurre o se recurrió mucho al inicio de las artes electrónicas. Para mí fue muy importante escogerla porque en el momento de tocarla tú puedes sentir y trasladarte y pensar en la abstracción que hizo el preso al que José Antonio le pidió el intercambio. Es decir, el hecho de que él vaya en su espalda tocando la pared de la cárcel y tratar de abstraer esa sensación y ponerla en las cerámicas me parece interesante y que de alguna manera desarticula todas estas nociones y concepciones que se han manejado tanto en las artes electrónicas. Por otro lado, para terminar, me parece también muy importante dentro de este concepto que estoy manejando, porque es una línea curatorial que estoy inaugurando ahora de manera independiente, que precisamente es Ethical Intrusion in Aesthetic Behavior. Me parece interesante también hablar sobre las modalidades de la red, dado que justo la aldea global lanza una serie de paradojas a partir de las cuales se establece una maquinaria muy compleja en la que parece que precisamente se hace un rebasamiento al territorio nacional, es decir, estamos hablando de una aldea global y esto se pone de relieve con la pieza de internetis.tv, porque de alguna forma encontramos o revela cuáles son las formas complejas dentro de las cuales se manejan estos intercambios. Es decir, Tuvalu, por su situación geopolítica, cede su dominio .tv, y esto de alguna manera se establece porque se vuelve un único recurso que él del que puede prescindir para obtener recursos. debido a su situación geopolítica. Y por otro lado, el hecho de que ahora el punto TV esté detentado por las televisoras, es decir, por los espacios de televisión, me parece que arroja una serie de reflexiones que es importante, porque al final punto TV como Tuvalu ya no existe en la red y queda en una zona de silencio. Por lo demás, me gustaría que los artistas hablaran sobre sus propios proyectos y agradecerles nuevamente. I want to thank you again for your passions with my English. And I'm so deeply grateful with all of you.
Is there anyone to notice? And Javier from Laboratorio, just do you want to?
No. I just wanted to turn it to you.
Oh, okay. Yes,
I think-
thank you.
sorry.
All right. With Santiago providing
Yeah.
chorus.
Well, let's see if the experiment functions. Otherwise, I'm sorry in advance. Again, as they mentioned, we're a collective, and first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation to Curated and to Trish, and of course to Karla Villegas and all the team that is working here. I would like to talk a little bit about our collective because it's very important for us, like, to make a little point here in terms of which are our interests in terms of technology and political statement that we have. We like to work with different communities. Most of the time we're working with marginal communities. And, well, the idea is to establish always a process that normally it's not that we don't like to arrive to a place and, start this contact with people and then just cut it like that and, like this kind of superficial approaches that a lot of artists do sometimes with these kind of interests. We like to establish long-term duration relationships with the communities that we reach in every different project, and also, and because of this project that we are presenting here, it's just a part of a big process that we are initiating right now. And somehow also it has like this kind of backwards in terms that we did before, like in 2007, another project in the south frontier of Mexico. And sorry? Border. Okay. And well, in this project we were working in an indigenous community, and we made these interventions with different artists, and we were talking about, well, some of the pieces had this point in technology, and I think I'm going to stop. No? It didn't work, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll take over from where she left. Just like we did this project, and it was a 3-year duration project. It was it was in a Chol community, that is an indigenous community in Chiapas, in the border with Guatemala. And yeah, one of the most interesting things about it was like we thought about it like as a space between two translations, because even though it was Mexico, even though it was like it's a Mexican state. The people there spoke Spanish and Chol, but the Spanish language was like the foreign language. It was like the language from the conquistadores. So we were, as Spanish-speaking people, we came there, and it was like the initial thing, the initial problem was like how to translate from one language to another. But that was quite easy, relatively speaking, compared to trying to explain what was like the language of contemporary art. That was the real difficulty, like the real translation of what was art about these days, of what were our interests with them, was the whole thing. Like to make this kind of really to explain, like to explain to the other and to explain oneself and to try to discover what the other wants. This contact was the whole thing. And then, not only that, but after these 3-year processes, what we achieved and all the problems or limitations we had or the things we could really do, like to try to explain them again back to the art world, where we are most of the time functioning, was like another translation, because it was like then why go to like a corner of Mexico? It's the only place in southern Mexico where the northern border, in this precise point, is Guatemala. It's no longer the symbolic level of being the north being always like the developed countries, or in the case of Mexico, the U.S. And this place, it was Guatemala, and so Central America was on top of us. So it was like a metaphor of really talking to the other and talking trying to communicate, trying to create dialogues, like with a different kind of approach. And in this case, now that we were hearing Karla speaking in Spanish, I think we're kind of in a similar situation in a way. Probably not. It's not the Spanish and the English language. What is the main thing? The main translation could be like from art to engineers, or from art to or low-tech technologies or devices to high technology, state-of-the-art processes and developments. So these kind of translations, like trying to communicate from one kind of processes, like trying to achieve something, it's what is like for us. When Karla bring the invitation, she invited us to the project. I think that's one of the main things that was part of the project immediately. No, like the next thing is to work with this, like Lourdes was saying, a marginal community, the immigrants. And what we were doing with the piece is like we call it like a research piece. It's not like it's like an initial process, like the time we were here. It's like not enough to do something that is in a way useful for the communities themselves. It's just to sign out the problem right now. Like we want to develop some other things, but to do that, to be able to do that, is like these opportunities to be showing some works and showing some approaches to these problems are like the initial contact. So this is where something starts for us, and that will develop in the course of probably 2 or 3 years, it depends. And what we are finding right now, like the most initial approach to that, is that there's a lot of, in the immigrant issue, there's a lot of things to do back in Mexico, and because it's always from Mexico and the U.S., the Mexican government is always blaming the U.S. for many things. I mean, of course, it's a very, the structure of power is so different that it's a very small country that feels kind of oppressed by this humongous country on the top, no? On top of it. But there's a lot of things that the Mexican government is not doing. So our main concerns are really to go over there to the northern border, to northern cities in Mexico, and really to tackle these kind of problems. There's a lot of things that the immigrants are even without papers in Mexico and being Mexicans. And most of the problems are really on the Mexican side all the time anyway. So like out of our research, this is something that we are kind of approaching right now, and to see how this will develop in different ways in the future to come. And so I think that that's something I can tell you. That we don't have too much time to tell you about a lot of different interests that we have as a collective. Just to tell you something else that we are about to do. After this project, we're going to be working with unions in Boston and Wisconsin, because of course you might know about the problems in the unions, like being rejected or being even prohibited in the state of Wisconsin. So that's the kind of work we like to do, and in the long term, creating systems of information, archives, and how to trace memories from the people that are really in these kind of problems, like currently. So this is the kind of works we're doing in the collective. And I guess it's my colleague's time.
Great. Thank you, Javier. So, well, we'll just move to Laura. Oops. Laura Balboa.
Hi. Well, thank you. I'm Laura, and I want to thank everyone, the artist, Karla, the curator, and all the team from Curated. So thanks for being here too, for listening. My English isn't like very good, but I'm gonna make my best. I'm better reading than speaking, so I'm gonna read a brief text I made with notes. So Internet.tv is the first piece of a series of what I call real virtuality artworks. It's a project about how the so-called virtual world of the internet interacts and relates to reality. The piece is a metaphor about the paradox of the .tv suffix used for the television industry nowadays, and the assigned country code top-level domain for Tuvalu, a small nation in the South Pacific that it is just a few meters and a few feet above the sea level, and in danger of submersion. I call it real virtuality because I think the evolution of technology, in this case the internet, has a strong relationship with world order tendencies and geopolitical phenomena. This is an analysis about how the material and semantic uses of language can be somehow ironic and absurd when relating with a situation that involves human goods, people, and survival. Tuvalu counts with the marketing of its suffix to get most of their income and to sustain their economy. They do not have television stations or any big media structures of their own, of course, because they're the fourth smallest nation in the world. So the Internet authorities assigned the administration contact for the suffix I told earlier before, and most of its management is run by a company called VeriSign. So any income from any popular .tv domain name is controlled by them, and just a percentage of that income goes to Tuvalu. So this piece is like the first phase of a series of artworks I'm going to do from now on, relating with that specific population and the influence and interchange of how they live there and their situation, like the social and political way of life of the Tuvalunians, and the use of the information in the internet. My interest was to show this as an evidence of how it is so absurd that the semantic use of these names, domain names, are like very even funny, that the .tv, that means television, is related to a country that is very small and has like the basic and the has like a lack of technology. Even that situation is very absurd. So this is like the face of the evidence of this situation. Then I'm gonna do a lot of pieces that involve the interchange of the communication with the people who live in there. So enjoy the piece, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Antonio.
Well, first I'd like to thank you as all of my mates, to the people who invite me and who invite us. You know, the Curated, Trish, Alice, and especially to Ricardo Dominguez, and also to Karla Villegas, who invited me to present one piece here. So I'd like to talk to you about this piece because it belongs to a bigger project. This project is called Time Divisa. Well, it has not translation to English. Well, you know, time is time. But Divisa is very curious because in Latin languages, such as Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish, has so many meanings. For example, in Spanish, is currency. In Italian, is to divide. And in Portuguese, is to see, divisar. Okay, well, this project is Time Divisa because I'm very interested in one technology, because I like to talk to you about this, my idea of technology that most of the time is related to electronics. But technology is also another things, such as magic, such as economy. Well, I'm very interested in this idea of economy because economy is let's call it, the technology that rules the whole world. And I'm interested in how economy makes a representation of time. This representation of time is money, because we have to work for having money. And when we rest for working the other day, and also for consuming, for expending money. You know, for, what's the name? Gastar? Yeah, to expend money, sorry. So, from my personal point of view, art has the possibility of changing the world. You know, it's not naive. But for me, world is not this abstract entity, but the things that we have close, you know, the closest relationships, the closest space we have, the space that we build, you know, every day. That's why I try to look for these scale models. These, I don't know the correct translation to English, but it's maquettes, these little models. In this case, thinking about economy, how economy works as a system of representation of time and money also is as an abstraction of time, I was looking for a model of how society works economically, and I found that this model is the prison. Well, in the particular case of Mexico, also I think that in the United States. So I went into the prison and I proposed to the inmates a deal. This deal is that I could do whatever they asked me to do, in exchange that at the same time they do whatever I ask them to do. We would exchange our recordings of time, you know. Whatever they asked me to do was recorded in video, and at the same time, whatever I asked them to do was recorded in drawings or, you know, making objects. I wanted to complete like a cycle. This cycle was 365, like a year, you know, that is the cycle universal to almost all the cultures. These were time exchanges that had to do, well, the exchanges that the prisoners and I did had to be simultaneously, you know, because I wanted to know that at the same time they were doing whatever I asked them to do. I was like, for example, hugging their mothers, you know, walking, getting drunk, etc., etc., etc. The piece I'm presenting here is part of these 365 time exchanges. Is the time exchange number 62, I guess. In this exchange, the prisoner asked me to go and to drive his new car because it was his birthday and I had to drive his car. In exchange, I asked him to touch with his back all the perimeter of the prison and to make the, you know, to go all around the perimeter of the prison and to draw the things that he could touch with his back. You know, he made these diagrams like electrocardiograms. And then I used those drawings for making like a braille wall, you know, with these tiles, for making this abstraction of the perimeter of the prison touchable. And I was interested in this border between what is outside and what is inside. That's why I was very interested in making a piece that could be like interactive in another way, you know? So I think that that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Antonio, could you elaborate just a little bit more on, so the back impressed against the ceramic tile?
Yeah.
And how is the shape made
yeah,
onto the tile?
sorry.
How's the impression made?
Yeah, well, I'm going to do like a little acting because for me, even in Spanish, it's very difficult to explain it in words. What the prisoner did for me was that I gave him, you know, some sheets, some paper sheets, and he has to touch with his back all the perimeter of the prison. When he was touching with his back, he was drawing like, you know, like an electrocardiogram. He made like these drawings that were like the little hills. And then I used those drawings for making, you know, these ceramic tiles, you know, this representation 3D of the drawings, so they could be touchable, like the language the blind use uses that I was very interested in this metaphor, making the perimeter of this frontier between the prison and the outside touchable. So it's more or less like that.
And so it's actually intended to be touched by visitors.
Yeah, that's why this piece was in the Sao Paulo Bienal, and that's why it's dirty, because all the people touch the piece, and I'm very interested in the piece to get dirty, because it's the people who's touching that. The people is touching the prison, is touching this abstraction of time and prison.
Right. So you think about the kind of encoding of potential meaning onto a surface in some way.
Yeah.
And the ways in which that gets activated by a visitor. So in this case, it's not necessarily through sight so much as, both, but it's intended to be touched.
Yeah.
And through that touching, which is a kind of mobile one, moving along the surface, something is recuperated. Something you access a condition that you wouldn't otherwise, but you do it through through sensory function. So
it's more like that. Sorry if my explanation was not totally clear, but
And actually, just before, I think we'll move into discussion very shortly. But I also want to have one more clarification. Laura, in your piece, how when you see the visualization, could you talk a little bit about what we're actually seeing? Because it's a very lulling wavescape, and one senses that one is sort of in the midst of an ocean. And I know that part of the intention of the work is to bring in the very real material conditions of an island, which is endangered.
Yeah.
So behind the sort of the scrims of the internet, basically, commercial structures of the internet, lie this tiny little island, which is the fourth smallest in the world, and relies so much on its income by selling its domain. So we have a sense. You want to give a sense of the realities of this place as a physical, real site and its population. And so, how can you talk about how we actually become aware of that in the work? What are the access points to that?
Well, it's in two spaces. The piece is in two levels. The first one, it's the information in real time that is displaying in the monitor of all the most popular .tv domains, and the thing is that reacts with the behavior and the graphics that are projected in the walls. So the thing is that with the interaction of the piece of the user with the monitor, with the website, you can have a third level of information with this data if you don't do anything at all. It is kind of like an analogy and a metaphor about the user navigation in the internet and how information just blocks your panorama, and you don't notice what is going on outside. You are not aware or subconscious about what is going on in another part of the world. So that is a graphic displaying that situation in the back. And how technology and complexity of graphics has its own beauty, and that is like that, and it's important too. So
okay, great, thank you. We don't have a question, Micah.
Yes. Well, indeed, I have to tell you that there was a time exchange that maybe it was the 310. I don't remember right now the number because I'm quite dyslexic. But in one exchange, well, I'm gonna, if you want, well, in one exchange, basically, I freed the inmate. You know, you have to see it because it is in the little screens that you are gonna be shown in one hallway. Well, talking about the negotiation with the inmates, I get into the prison, in a tricky way, because that project was possible in Mexico because also there's this, I'm gonna say it in this way, this corruption in Mexican prison. That was for me, the corruption was a blessing for me, because I could do a lot of things that in another country it wouldn't be, possible. So that's why I could do those with that. In terms of negotiation with the inmates, when I enter, there's a little weird because a lot of things, I believe that the prison is like a scale model of the prison, but not totally, because it's like a caricature, because it's not exact, some of the characteristics are like exaggerated and some others are like inverted, In this negotiation, it was a negotiation of trust. Because in the prison, the economics, and the relations works in different way. Honor is important, since there's not a written law that is going to be followed. Honor, to trust in the word of the other is very important. It's like a contradiction because it's a prison. It is supposed that all the people there is like dishonorable, but it's just the other way. Honor is important part. And the negotiation was made, I was making through their hands my work as an artist, as in the Renaissance, these big workshops like, Rubens, not Renaissance, that's Baroque, like, Botticelli, by example, they had all these assistants who made, for example, this one who made the peacocks and this one who made the forest and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the artist is like a composer. It's not a maker, It's not that word. The artist is in charge to create the language, to compose the language. And the visual art is also language. And in terms, I just lost the way of my talking. Well, in those terms, the negotiation was, I proposed them that I would do whatever they asked me to do, no restrictions. So and in exchange, I was doing, my work as an artist, making this experimentation like an artist, using the intuition, using like this way of researching as an artist, it's more or less like using other hands, but it was like a pretty complicated. I don't know if I have enough time for explaining with you one later, but it was something like that. Yeah. Well, yeah. In terms when I took out the prison, if you want, I can. In prison, is forbidden to make maps, because it's considered as a prison break, obviously. But when we make a literal prison break, I offer him. Well, I wanted to have the complete map of the prison, so I proposed him to make me the complete map of the prison. I wanted this map to be made, using his footsteps. Each footstep he could do would be translated to a drawing. In exchange, I had like a sponsorship from a bank. I was thinking, in which should I use this money? Because if from a bank and in art, everything is meaningful. And I realized, well, I may use it in this way. And in exchange of this complete map of the prison, I used this money and this time that I did in exchange for free him. And now he's free, basically.
Interesting thing how ethics kinds of really intrudes into so many different levels. There being the ethics of prison life in terms of responsibilities between inmates, ethics of art practice in terms of responsibility to audiences, to economies of art, ethics of society, the society that persecutes, that houses prisoners, determines right and wrong, all those sort of things, right? Yeah. Complex negotiations to be making. Doug?
Laura, in looking at, did you take into account global climate change, its impact on Tuvalu, which will presumably at some point disappear?
Yeah.
At the same time, the television suffix is
Yeah.
People go online and they're not even, watching television anymore in the sense of a technology. Did you think about that and trying to sort of merge those?
Yeah, it's funny because that paradox, like it's almost like it has the same meaning with the reality of Tuvalu, because television is dying as a media. Internet is like more and more important to people and even to economy, like the knowledge and the circulation of data in the internet is even more important than this usual format of the television. So it's funny because it's almost the same that is happening in reality with this climate change. Is going to happen in a way with this technology and with the network. So it's curious because in Tuvalu, just a few of the population has access to internet. They put information and their photos and some stuff in a Yahoo forum, and they don't even like have a TV domain for their own with their same suffix. So, and the use and the marketing of the .tv domains, it's more like useful for maybe names like China.tv or business.tv. And the funny thing is that the domains that sales the most are sex.com or porn.tv or porn.com. So even the .tv domain is gonna die somehow, maybe in a few years. So it's funny how reality and this perception of virtuality mixes. Yeah.
Questions? Yes.
Mr. Toscano, can you tell us a little bit about the Chol community? About the Chol, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about them, but just on a few words, and taking some of the previous questions up there about the expectations, dreams, desires mainly, it was very interesting. Like the contact with a different community, like what we are dealing with, always different communities, not only language-wise, but also like immigrants are a community in a way. So in that way, of course, once they understood we were the kind of artists that were not like singing or appearing in the television, that those artists, that we were doing different things and most like closer to painting and sculpture, but not quite, then they were like kind of clueless, and we wanted to negotiate. That was the key word for us, like to negotiate, like to come with them and tell them, we're not going to fix all your problems. There's a lot of immediate needs that they have, and we cannot solve them. We're not a government agency or anything like that. Even though we come from the center, from the capital city, we come to this marginal community, and it's like it's a very strong sensation of trying to deal with all of these desires, expectations suddenly all up on you. And what we did is like, we want to really work with you and like to see if there is we have no preconceived ideas, but we want to see like if there are some developments that a group of us can make with you on the community, and to try to develop on some problems. No, one of the things, like there were a lot of projects that were really achieved in a 3-year period. One of the ones I like the most, it's one we made with a Guatemalan artist. She's called Jasmine Hash, and what she did was like she gathered a lot of information from the Guatemalan side of the border, from the elder. There was a civil war in Guatemala up to the late 80s, and the elder remember a lot of of things from this war. One of them was that there was like a strategy from the central government in Guatemala that was called, they were building up model villages all around Guatemala, especially on the north in the Petén. And the elder remember a lot of these plans for these villages were supposed to be populated by the army, the Guatemalan army, and they would be using the population of these villages as human shields. So it was like a kind of a very perverted strategy to really attack and to counterattack the guerrillas in the north, which they couldn't get otherwise. And so like what we did with them, with the community on the other side of the river, the Sumacinta River, was that the elder remembered a lot of stories like this. And what we said is, okay, let's build up a small kind of memory park or memory for the Guatemalan Civil War. And the artists got like the help from the army, the actual Guatemalan army, the current one, the younger, the lowest degrees, to build this village in a scale 2:1. So it was like small, kind of a small village. This village was actually never completed because the war ended before it could be all completed. But the plans were made, and the elder were telling all the stories and redrawing all the plans and really the map of how that should have been ended. So with that thing, it's like we brought the army, the Guatemalan army, to build up everything. So it was like a collision between the younger persons in the army now and the elder from those days. And it was a different shock, so to say, like once again, but turned like upside down. Now the army was under the control or under the orders of the members of this community. The members of this community were very interested in recovering this memory and to build up like a park to remember all these stories. And they would say, okay, maybe this can work. There is like a tourist track in Guatemala and southern Mexico for the Maya route or something. And they were really hoping that it would work, even to make people aware, tourists aware, that there had been like a civil war not so long ago. And a lot of tragedies took place in these places are not remembered anymore. So it was like this kind of negotiations, like what can we do with you? Not for you, but what can we do together? Like if we join forces, like maybe we find some places where we can build up on something. We have some skills, some memory building skills maybe, or recovering some archives or some kinds of capacity sometimes, even to try to convince some, I don't know, an authority or something, make up the paperwork to make something work. So that kind of thing brought us like a lot of I mean, in this kind of cases, it was like a small achievement, but in a community, it makes, at least for a moment, or at least as long as they can hold on to it, it makes a contribution at least. So this is like one of the things I would say now, just to finish, and to come back again to the desires and dreams issue. It's like, that's why we want to commit in longer-term processes, because the art system is going so fast all the time. It's going like from one exhibition to the next, from one opening to the next, so that it doesn't get enough time to build up on something sometimes. So many things that are going on are really quick, and we are really thinking that if we are to achieve something in a community, we should commit like in mid-term to longer-term processes. So that's why it takes some time to get to know what's needed, what's to be negotiated, what's to be achieved, or what can be meaningful. But that's like what we are trying to do.
All right, so I think it's a good time that we continue in the gallery itself. We hope that everyone will join us for the reception, which begins now. And the artists in Curatorial will be available for further conversation. And thank you very much for speaking to us today.